Alright guys, I want to ask you something. How hard is it to make a video game? It's pretty hard, but let me ask you another question now. How hard is it to cancel a video game? Pretty easy. Anyone could do that.
How rude.
And that's the basic reason why some of these companies, these developers, these publishers struggle to get video games out, because making a video game is quite a tall task. But overcoming that task and making a good game surely means you reap the benefits, right? That's the idea. It seems like some of them aren't willing to put in the hard yards sometimes though, especially when you see news of Warner Brothers recording a loss of $300 million over the last few years because some of their games were flops.
We were on the verge of greatness.
Now, while we're here, I just want to remind you all of the properties Warner Brothers own and the franchises they're capable of making games with. Harry Potter and the Wizarding World Hogwarts franchise, of course. We have all of DC, including Batman, including Wonder Woman, including Superman, all of the Justice League, the Joker, some of the villains, the Penguin, the Riddler, the Green Lantern.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
They also own the Lord of the Rings. And when was the last time we had a good Lord of the Rings video game? I'm looking at you, Gollum. They also have The Matrix, which as far as I know only has 4 video games ever made. The most recent of those being The Matrix Awakens from 2021, which was more of just a tech demo to show off Unreal Engine 5. As impressive as that was, it wasn't really a game. We also have Game of Thrones, there's a lot of potential there, and then they also have studios like TT Games, who have made so many of the LEGO games we've known and loved over the last 20 years. But they're fumbling it. Fair depiction of what it's like at Warner Brothers right now.
How dare you?
Hey everyone, it's Andrew. And that's just the thing that's blowing my mind about this. Warner Brothers literally owns some of the biggest IPs in the history of the world. The history of the world! And yet, according to this new Jason Schreier article, everything is hitting the fan right now, including the kitchen sink.
And I have the feeling that kitchen sink is coming pretty soon.
I'm putting multiple metaphors together. So you might have seen a few years ago there was an announcement and trailer that Monolith were making a Wonder Woman game. Monolith are of course the creators of the Middle-earth game Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, both of which I think most people will agree were quite innovative. Those games are probably most well known for the Nemesis system, where if you'd kill an enemy later in the game, they'd come back to life with the memory that you'd killed them and hunt you down.
I spent so much time hating you that I'll regret killing you.
And apparently for a while they were trying to apply this same concept in some different way to the Wonder Woman game, but it just wasn't sticking. This up-and-coming Wonder Woman game has been rebooted, but is seemingly struggling behind the scenes. They're struggling to get this thing off the ground, with Warner Brothers Montreal now also assisting on making it, while also pitching their own Game of Thrones game. This likely involves creating some type of tech demo around the Game of Thrones world and environments, and showing what the game could be like to higher-ups and internals at the company to hopefully get it off the ground, get it greenlit, get funding approved, and go ahead and make the game. But all of this has seemingly come at a cost. There were also ideas for another Gotham Knights game, which was going to take parts of what Gotham Knights was, even though that was certainly not a memorable game, and create like a Gotham Knights 1.5 style thing that was scrapped. There was also an idea for a John Constantine game, which I think would be so sick if anyone remembers the Keanu Reeves film from like 20 years ago. And then also a Flash game. But apparently after the Flash film that released a few years ago was a bit of a flop, they decided to also scrap the idea of making a game. I always imagined a Flash game being like you're just playing as Sonic, but it's more realistic, I want to say. But it's kind of crazy that Warner Brothers are now in this position, that they've seemingly put themselves in this position. Their only successful title of the past few years was Hogwarts Legacy, that being the highest selling game of 2023, and the game that's really kind of saved them in the last few years. Avalanche, the studio who developed that game, are continuing to update the game and are also reportedly working on a sequel, Hogwarts Legacy 2. However, I'm a bit skeptical of a sequel. There are a lot of things the first one did that I personally didn't like. Felt quite rigid in a lot of ways, can't just land your broom anywhere. The story wasn't really that memorable. The things it did well were combat and open world exploration of Hogwarts. But now that Harry Potter fans have had both those things fulfilled, what is a second game really gonna do for anyone? I guess you could argue they could add things like Quidditch, but part of the reason Warner Brothers are in this spot of bother right now is because of that Quidditch game they developed. I thought it was kind of fun, but also completely flopped.
Look familiar?
And the same goes for multiverses. Warner Brothers were relying on that to be a source of income for the company for several years with its live service. But again, didn't really live up to the expectations, kind of flopped, lost a lot of players, and then they've announced that they're twilighting the game.
Coincidence? I think not!
So to recap, Warner Brothers have lost $300 million. The Wonder Woman game they were developing is struggling, but has apparently been rebooted and is in development again. There's potentially going to be a Game of Thrones game. A Flash game has been cancelled. A John Constantine game has been cancelled. Hogwarts Legacy is the only thing that saved them over the past few years, and they're potentially making a sequel while continuing to support the first game. And to add, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was also a complete failure. Another game that they were hoping would be able to sustain the company for several years to come. But it wasn't the case, because it wasn't that good at all. So the only real good news to come out of all of this is that they're going back to Batman.
All right.
Apparently, Rocksteady, who made Suicide Squad, but also made the Arkham trilogy, are now going to develop a new Batman title, which will potentially be quite similar to the Arkham games.
Been a while since a bat's been in the cave.
It seems like right now Batman is kind of their only hope, but I also just want to talk a bit about TT Games because it's been a while since we've heard from them, and if I'm honest, I'm getting kind of worried. TT Games have released a game nearly every year for the past 20 years, and since the release of LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga in 2022, it's been complete silence. We've heard nothing about what they're working on. There are potential rumors that they're moving towards Batman and or Harry Potter for their next few games. It's been quite a while since they visited these franchises, and it seems likely TT would go down this route, considering both Batman and Harry Potter are franchises that Warner Brothers own the rights to. Therefore, they're going to make all the money. TT Games is a Warner Brothers studio. Batman and Harry Potter are Warner Brothers IPs, therefore they don't have to dish out any additional licensing apart from Lego, I guess, the agreement they have with Lego. But it's not like with Star Wars, which is a franchise owned by Disney, of course, and then they have to give also some of the profits to Disney for developing a Lego Star Wars game, and to Lego as well. The funny thing about all of this though is that their recent Batman film and the reboot of the Batman franchise is doing really well. The Batman in 2022 was an awesome film, was widely received as a fresh take on the Batman universe, as was the Penguin series that released last year. Both a really refreshing, modern, different look at the DC universe, with the second Batman film on the way potentially in 2027. So maybe it's too soon, but it's odd that they didn't learn from the Batman success to bring that into the gaming space, which is clearly what they're doing now though, giving Rocksteady the permission to go ahead and make a new Batman game. They're going back to basics, back to their roots, back to what people want.
Can we trust him?
But it's just one of those things where you're asking yourself, how are you getting this so wrong? You own some of the biggest IPs and franchises in the world, and yet you're not really delivering on them?
I suppose you think that was terribly clever.
For example, I feel like there's so much potential within the Lord of the Rings universe to create a Skyrim style of game. Give us a polished open world RPG set in Lord of the Rings. Apparently right now there is a Lord of the Rings MMO RPG being developed by Amazon Games. That's been in development for a number of years, and the release date is still yet to be set. We are getting Tales of the Shire this year, which is a cozy game set in Middle-earth. And maybe after what's happening now with changes in upper management, shifts within the company, and hopefully a new sense of direction, they will actually start to deliver on some of these big IPs they own. There's so much potential here.
I have no memory of this place.
It feels like Warner Brothers for a few years have lost their sense of direction. It's odd that they pushed a single-player studio to create a game like Suicide Squad, a multiplayer shooter. A studio that was focused on making these really tight-knit, grounded story Batman games. Hey, can you go make a multiplayer shooter that we hope can have a live service and make us millions and millions of dollars? Didn't work out.
Now you've just made it weird.
The other thing I think we're potentially going to see here is Warner Brothers licensing out more of their IPs to other developers outside the ones owned by Warner Brothers. And this kind of reminds me of the LucasArts thing from way back in, 2012, when Disney bought Lucasfilm for $4 billion. They completely shut down LucasArts, the game studio who developed so many of the iconic Star Wars games we knew and loved. That said, it seemed like a lot of this was due to mismanagement, misdirection, and Disney, I guess, had their own ideas for what they wanted to do with the Star Wars gaming IP. For 10 years, they gave it to EA. Probably not the wisest choice to give it to one company, to give it to one publisher.
Do it.
But now we're seeing Star Wars branched out and given to a bunch of other publishers. That's still not going great right now. Hoping things pick up. Maybe this isn't the best comparison, but in theory, this should be working.
Just like the simulation.
I don't know though, it feels like the Wonder Woman game might end up in development hell, and if it ever does release, perhaps it won't live up to expectations. That's what I hope doesn't happen. I want to be optimistic about this, and on a personal note, I really hope we hear what's happening from TT Games soon. I need a new Lego game in my life. So what do you want to see? New Batman, Game of Thrones, a new Hogwarts game, a John Constantine game, a Flash game? Did they do something with the Matrix? Let me know in the comments. If you want to learn everything there is to know about EA's cancelled Star Wars Battlefront 3, yes, they pitched Battlefront 3 after Battlefront 2 was cancelled, and watch this video here. Also, come follow me on Instagram, Twitter, join my Discord and TikTok for more of me, more of this, and thanks for watching this. My name's Andrew. I'll catch you soon.